Yeah, Piotr already introduced me. My name is Norbert Melzer, and some of you might better know me under my screen name Norbs. I work at Jobrad Loop since November 23 and do their Elixir professionally, but I started using Elixir and Erlang as a hobbyist in about 2013, plus minus a year. Professionally, I do it since 2022, not that long ago. But I have a quite strong interest in a variety of programming languages since I started learning coding on a Commodore Basic, Commodore +4 with Commodore Basic 3.5 in the early 90s. But we are here to learn something about Obsidian. So let's first start with what is Obsidian. Clearly, it is a note-taking software. They introduce themselves as exactly that, and as a knowledge database for personal knowledge. You can use it as a local wiki or as a markdown editor, but that is far below its actual capabilities if you just treat it like that. And personally, I consider the local wiki part is quite entangled with a personal knowledge database anyway. Its markdown is an extended markdown syntax. Many things are taken from GitHub flavored markdowns. You got tables, you got different kind of extensions in that directions. One of the more unique extensions is the linking of pages within a vault, where a vault, you can consider a vault a project. And vault links are written with a double square brackets. You can either link a page name directly, then it will be displayed with a page name. You can use the pipe symbol to give the link an alias, then you will see the alias, but it links to the page name. Or you can use the fence symbol to link to a subsection within the page. You can combine the pound symbol and the pipe. You do also have a way to link down to paragraphs, but that is not in scope here. Pages can have tags, and you can mention a tag that you want to give to a page just within the text by preceding it in the good old Twitter fashion with a hashtag. This will automatically create a link to a search page, and you can browse your links there. Links can have tag names can have slashes, which will automatically produce a hierarchy of tags with which you then can browse similar to file folders in the tag browser. It makes extensive use of Markdown front matter to assign metadata to your tags. That's when you start a Markdown file with 3 dashes, then you can put Markdown, a YAML in there, and then you close this YAML metadata block with another 3 dashes. Since some recent update, you can also have Notion-like databases where you have single pages which contain a little bit like a query over your metadata, and display whatever the result is. You can edit within that displayed table or cards, depending on how you let them visualize. And the edit you do on this page, this accumulated page, will directly transfer to your files. Though I have not really used that feature yet, but I have seen introductory videos about it. And there are a lot of community plugins. And I think that's why we are here. But before I introduce the plugins or anything, I wanted to tell you about a bit how I personally use Obsidian. I keep my daily notes in it, mostly for job and personal work. I have just a time tracking system where I put starting time, end time, ticket, and a description of the work done. Here in this case, there was an idea about this talk, and I assigned it, or I tracked it with the ticket number CB25, which is codebeam.bsky, and the first ticket within that project is get some ideas. So that was mostly fitting. Yeah. For personal stuff, as said, I use quite the same notation. If there's no ticket to something I do, then I leave off the ticket number and just have starting and end time. And the description, this is quite often for daily meetings or similar stuff. I keep Today I Learned notes as a kind of flashcards, which I review regularly, usually once a week. And there we use a special notation with the minus for an unordered list, a description of or a question, and then the double semicolon. And after the double semicolon, we have the answer to the question. And it's barely visible here due to the green light we got. There is a HTML comment which gets maintained by the flashcard plugin I use. It's called Spaced Repetition. It contains the date when I answered the card the last time, I think, as well as some metadata in numerical form. And yeah. I generally link tickets I work with, so I can keep notes about the work I did within the specialized page of the ticket, usually just prose of things that I did and explanations to myself. I generally keep notes about systems or software I work with within dedicated pages. So when I do a code diving to learn about how a function is implemented, I take my learnings, keep it there, write ideas about refactoring, which might be discussed with coworkers. I keep my meeting notes within it. And of course, for my free time, I play Factorial Satisfactory or Dwarf Fortress. I also do some planning within Obsidian and keep it there. People I meet, like today, will probably end up in my database, often just single sentences, not full stories, just to remind myself the next time I meet them what I have discussed with them. And I have to say, people I meet nearly daily do have barely any mention. That's the funny part. But what I not do are weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly notes, or recaps. I played with it, I tried it, but I didn't find a form that worked well for me, so I left it out. It felt like a burden. Other people might have more fun or use out of it, and they are free to do whatever they can do. I generally do not follow any scientific approach to note-taking. I just write what I think and how I think I will understand it in the future. And Git will then handle the rest for me. And I do not hesitate to edit stuff I added already, because things might change and Git keeps history if it becomes relevant. And even though possible, I do not hold presentations in Obsidian. Again, I played with it, but the features and the design possibilities were rather limited. And at least at the time when I tried it, it didn't even have a presenter mode such that I have my slides with comments here and the slides for the audience there. Though we wanted to have a plugin. To write a plugin, there has to be some functionality that you miss. Otherwise, if it's already there, you do not need to write a plugin. So what am I missing? We have this nice feature of a graph that shows you how your pages you have added are interconnected, how you are linked. All those red dots you do see here, if you are not colorblind, are my daily notes. You have a single yellow dot on the lower edge. That's some person that for some reason is tightly coupled to the daily notes I have, or to at least some of them. And the grays are a variety of other texts I have. Probably ticket descriptions, notes to functions, and similar. What we also have are some disconnected dots at the outer rim of the graph. And there is no, as a graph is not built deterministically, those are appearing every time you build the graph on a different place. So it's very hard to understand which parts of your knowledge database are disconnected from each other. And one of my ideas was to write a plugin that allows me to analyze islands of knowledge. But this is not what the talk will end with. Also, my tabularic time tracking is fine for the human, but I cannot query my daily notes for how long did I work in 2nd February 2024 or similar. I have to open the page, manually count the hours, and yeah, that's sometimes nasty. So these are my two basic pain points, because of which I wanted to write a plugin. So the first look we had to take was on how do you write a plugin normally. You usually have a plugin object which you extend in TypeScript and call and provide callbacks to, and those implement the logic. This plugin you have will have a number of different methods, fields, attributes, which you can access and call to actually implement your plugin, and that you can use to retrieve data about your pages, contents of your pages, metadata, front meta contents, and similar. They distinguish between app, a metadata cache, or the vault. And for me, as an implementer, it was not always clear when I should look up some method in the app or in the vault, because it felt to be the same, and the documentation was rather sparse on the differences. The documentation is basically just you have this properties, you have this methods, and another section of related functionality that links elsewhere. There's barely any description, barely any higher level description, and everything you learn about the various objects you have is mostly through other people's code or plugin sources. Yeah. Your final deployable plugin then will consist of at least the main JS and a manifest.json, and can optionally have style CSS and data.json. Where the data.json can be altered at runtime. So you can use it as a kind of database. The main JS is usually the compiled form of your plugin, which you write in TypeScript, Module.js, or whatever you prefer. I have heard there are plenty of dialects. And it's also usually obfuscated, tree shaken, and whatnot. So barely readable. The manifest.json holds the plugin name, version, and author metadata, and 3 or 4 other fields I do not remember, and are less useful from my point of view. There is no way to specify plugin dependencies within the manifest as far as I could tell. I have to say, the metadata cache from the plugin is used as some, you have to extract it once, and then you have to pass it to every other function or method you call from within the plugin. This kind of using it felt weird, but it was how it was done at the end. But yeah. Don't mind the formulation. I have reordered some slides, and this was usually after the one you see next. That's why it tells you have already seen the onload. The other 2 callbacks we have are on user enable and on unload. Yeah. So on the Gleam side, how do we start? We initialize our project as we would regularly. We then copy an ES-build config, a TS config, and the manifest.json from the Obsidian sample plugin, which is generally used as a base template for regular JavaScript-based plugins. And then we adjust them to our needs, like the plugin name in the manifest JSON. And for some reason I did not understand, we had to change the target in the S-build config from ES 2018 to 2020. And that one took about 2 hours to figure out because I do not speak JavaScript, and even less I do speak JavaScript errors. So after we have the base, we need some wrapper that actually calls our Gleam code. So we create a main TS which first imports the plugin from the Obsidian package, and it exports a default class that extends the plugin. Here. On the Gleam side, we create a main function, but the name doesn't actually matter. And for the time being, we just take a plugin, return nil, and we'll define a type plugin, just opaque, to represent we have something here, but do not actually know how to use it from within Gleam. Then we import from this our main function from the generated JavaScript, and we can actually call the main function from the onload, just providing this as the plugin. So we now have code, but need to run it as a, even though the code doesn't do anything yet besides calling the entry point, we somehow need to get it into Obsidian. The workflow I have established for that was to first have a build and a preview task within the package JSON, because I somehow need to build everything, and as I already had the package JSON, I thought I can just use the scripts section there rather than dealing with a makefile or learning how to define custom tasks with Gleam, if that's even possible. And after using yarn build, or I think it's npm run build, if you use npm, you then have to copy the dist folder over into your plugin folder in your Obsidian vault. I have done that manually, just using copy. And then you have to open your vault, go into the community plugin settings, search for your plugin, and disable it once to unload and re-enable it to trigger the onload function. Once you have done this once, you can keep Obsidian open, copy over your recompiled main.js, and then re-toggle the switch, and the plugin will unload it, reload it, and you can use the new functionality right away. So, but we do actually want to do something with our plugin, which currently does nothing, as I have said already. So my first approach was to map each possible method I would call on the plugin object, the app object, the metadata object, and whatever else object I might need directly to some external function, which just forwarded a call. I used type annotations using ES-doc comments extensively because I then had editor support for finding the fields within the otherwise opaque object. Luckily, the Obsidian plugin, there is a node package on NPM that provides the type definitions, but only the type definitions, for Obsidian-related functionalities. So that way you can get that level of editor support. Though, as you can see, with using the ES-doc comment approach in MJS files, it gets tedious, and you have a lot to write to get little support from the editor, and that support you use only once to get the app suggested after you wrote plugin dot. And then I figured, by a simple change, I could use TypeScript files. I was happy. I deleted or I rewrote all the JavaScript glue code into TypeScript, and it was much more concise and better readable, and I didn't have to type all the ES-doc comments all the time, and yeah. Then I tried to write my first test, which then failed because it couldn't load any implementation from the Obsidian package. And then I went back to MJS files. After an hour, I realized they have the very same problem. They require that there's actual implementation in the code, and then I reduced it to this. It was as concise as the TypeScript code, but it didn't provide any completion support. But I didn't mind because I could remember that I want to use the app field when I write the getApp function. So I still had the problem that I couldn't test it because there has always been some code paths within Gleam that somehow needed that I somehow interact with the plugin object on the JavaScript side. And I was unable to find a way to mock this plugin in a way that I could use it without writing even more boilerplate in JavaScript, just to run the tests. An LLM suggested to leave off Gleam tests completely and write the tests in JavaScript and call my Gleam functions to then call back to JavaScript, just to be able to use ESMock or similar. I discarded that approach and played with something else. Because about the same time, we had a company internal functional programming course where we talked about not implementing stuff based on functions directly, but creating data types that describe what you want to do with it eventually. So I defined a data type. I have some plugin action, which could be either nothing or get the app, which holds a function and maybe some other plugin action. I removed all the glue code I had. That one felt good, actually. And I created a run function in the TypeScript wrapper. And I branched on the JavaScript type there, which first I needed to somehow decide what type do I have in the TypeScript side. I used these two functions here for the two examples. And then, if it's a no-op, I do nothing. If there is some, if it's not a no-op, I call the I run the previous plugin action, and then eventually I get my app. I call the function that is in the type with the app itself. I was able to construct some very limited and tedious to use type that made me able at the end to put a list of pages into the console within Obsidian. With this approach, it involved 5 or 6 types. It was tedious to work with, and whenever I changed something, I had to adjust the return type of my entry point. I think there's a lot that I could improve, but yeah, due to my unfamiliarity with the language and the plugin system, this is where I stopped and draw my conclusion. The first approach I had works well if you want to write something down quickly. If you do not want to test it, but just want to have it work. There are a couple of example plugins actually online on GitHub, which I have taken as inspiration, as something to look at and to learn from. The second approach feels much cleaner by the idea and more idiomatic, but you have to put a lot more of planning into it to get the types right that will describe your future actions. It definitely allows testing because you can now test your data structure rather than mocking some opaque JavaScript object that you can't barely access, that you cannot really access. And I'm pretty sure you can build a library or a framework out of it if you put the time into it. Though, as said, it requires a lot of thought. And I have to be honest, it is currently unclear whether a Node.js or TypeScript plugin could be added to the official plugin catalog that you access through the Obsidian settings. So, if there are any questions, or while there might be questions, I will also have my socials here.
Thank you. Right, so we have time for 3 minutes for questions. Are there any? We have one.
Thank you for the talk. When I saw what you were talking about, I was inspired to give it a go myself because I thought it sounded really cool. And I also hit up against the problem where it just seemed to be designed to be impossible to test. It was really challenging. The second approach you shared seemed interesting. Did you have much success actually writing tests once you used that architecture?
I did skip the testing part when I had that, not because it was impossible, but just because I ran out of time and I had other duties.
Thank you.